Hello, everybody. It's Kyle Van Voris from Tavern TCG. I'm here today with Ryan Miles. Ryan, how are you?
Doing great, Kyle. How's it going?
Good. It's going well. Ryan, he got first at the Richmond AGP over the weekend. He's on Team Outer World. Great showing at Richmond. What did you bring? Fill us in.
I brought a Necromancy aggro list. It's instead of the red, blue, and black, like the Italian list, it was red, green, and black. And the green was pretty much just for having it out to row with a fire at. And like the Italian list just kind of tried to kill you through it, but I felt like people were onto that, and I wanted to bring something a little bit different. And I brought a Necromancy with the Granny package and green instead of blue.
Yeah, it's awesome. Definitely a little different than what we were seeing prior. Historically, the Necromancy deck has a lot of trouble against Robe of the Fire Rat. So much so, and because that deck's so powerful, that other decks like Alice's World started maining 2 to 3 copies of Robe of the Fire Rat. Is that something? I mean, tell me a little bit about how it affects your deck and like what kind of things came up a lot that gave you the advantage. Obviously, Sinbad's there. How did that interaction work? Fill us in on why you felt that this was the right deck to bring.
For the most part, I knew I was going to be playing against I was going to be playing against a lot of other aggressive decks, so I really wanted to be as efficient as possible when killing opposing red cards. And the little reds with the poison apples, like just tapping to deal 1,000 damage for 0 mana was like the biggest draw for like that kind of package. Right. And then I knew that other aggressive decks would also be playing Robe with a Fire Rat, so I needed a really efficient way to deal with that as well. And that's where Elvish Bowman kind of stood out to me, where he's just a 1 mana answer to a 2 mana Robe with a Fire Rat. Right. And like the name of the deck here is just being as efficient as possible, using as little mana as possible to kill as big of a commitment of mana as your opponent has. Sinbad also was like one of my favorite cards in playtesting, but like the double green kind of wasn't really accessible. But he just has a lot of ways to trigger his ability, which can kill multiple robes at one time. Yeah. And his other 2 abilities of like killing enemy creatures and also like triggering Lancelot by buffing him by 400. Mm-hmm. Just a lot of things going on with that. And yeah, pretty much just trying to do as much with as little mana as possible and just being efficient was kind of what I went for.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the name of the game, right? When it comes to Force of Will, is that it seems like the most efficient decks, the ones that utilize their mana the best, are the ones that tend to be on top. That being said, another very efficient deck that is arguably one of the, if not the most powerful of the format, is Alice's World. Did you prep a lot for that matchup? What did you do to kind of combat Alice's World?
Yeah, so going into Dallas the week prior, the most testing that I had was against Alice's World. Like most of my team, like Royce and Ryan Valentino, were just playing Alice's World nonstop. Right. So going to Dallas, I was expecting to see more Dallas's World, but then I got crushed by aggro at Dallas. So coming into Richmond, I was like, all right, I need to main deck super hard for the aggro matchup, but I still need to be prepared for Alice's World because it's definitely a deck that people are going to play. Like maybe, you go an 8-round event, I would expect to play like 6 aggro decks and then 2 Alice's World decks. Right. So I wanted to sideboard really hard for the Alice's World matchup without even explicitly mainboarding for it. Mm-hmm. So what I did in the sideboard was I sided into Apostle of Creation, who's Kane. So I sided in 4 Leviton, Apostle of Creation, Susanoo, a second Barrier of Shadows, Flame King Shout, and that was kind of just hopefully I win game 1 against Alice's World, especially if I win the die roll. It seems like a shoo-in in my favor as long as I can kill their robes and kill them before they start developing their board. Yeah. But coming into game 2, they side out their Barrier of Shadows because I'm not playing any Regalia. I'm not flipping until like turn 3, turn 4. It's not really an issue. And then if I go into Kane just like uses mana to kill your opponent's creatures, and like Alice's World can just never set up a board once you flip Kane. In my top 8 match against Ryan Valentino, he actually it was either turn 2 or turn 3 double Gwybird, and I responded by like flipping Kane and then tapping Red Swords twice and just killing each Gwybird with 1 mana piece. Like it's just such a blowout that they can't ever really get creatures to stick to board when you have Kane flipped, and you're constantly ramping mana while he's out, and you just never lose tempo.
Yeah, that's huge. I think Kane was something that used to be pretty popular back when before Reflect. One of the ways you can combat Alice's World back before it was, the beast that it is now, I think, was with Kane. Now, We talked a little bit about this before we started recording, but I want to talk to you a little bit about deck building because I think it's something that a lot of players are either scared of or they dive too deep into, right? There's the people who build decks and they love brewing and they get really crazy and elaborate with what they're doing. Then there's the other people who are just like, I don't want to mess with a good list. Where, I mean, I know you fall in the middle there. What is your approach when deck building, just in general, whether you're starting from a new or you're trying to tune up an existing list?
Typically, I'll try and think about what's popular, what other people are playing. And when I first started dealing with necromancy lists, was like before anyone was really hopping onto it too much. It was like right after Pasadena, I believe, was when I started like looking at this, and I just wanted to play an aggro deck that played Split Heaven and Earth, and I wanted to play Blazer so that I wouldn't get punished for it, and I wanted to be red black, and I wanted to play Blazer, and I want to play Split Heaven and Earth, and I also wanted to be like super aggressive and efficient with my creatures, so I wanted to play Necromancy. I played Guinevere's, and I played 40 Thieves, and I would like flip Blazer into my opponent's Refrain so they couldn't stay as Refrain, and I would just like split them a few times per game. And that was like super greedy and super like mid game, and it really it was actually winning me a lot of tournaments, but it wasn't really optimized. And then my teammate Royce was like, "Why don't you just stop playing Blazer, play Reflect, and then just like trigger a Lancelot on turn 2, like after a turn 1 Guinevere?" And I'm like, "Oh, it seems a lot more broken than Split Heaven and Earth." So that's where I started like directing the deck, and then the Italian list came out, and they had the same kind of strategy, but they were doing the red, blue, black, and I'm like, that sounds interesting, but not really what I wanted to do. So basically, like, it started as this crazy idea where I knew there was some efficiency out of necromancy, and I really knew that aggro that could compete in the same like mid game area as Alice's World would be really good. And I just kind of was already in a different direction with that idea when the Italian list came out, and I didn't like want to compromise on my idea just to go with them. I'm like, people are going to be expecting the Italian list now, so I need to take what I know about having played this list and then just kind of finalize it. And really, it was just, this deck is good, but it needs to be ready for main decked Robe of the Fire Rat, and that's where like the green and the Sinbeds and the Elvish Bowman came in.
What do you?
So that's kind of where that went.
What was a card that you feel just overperformed over the weekend?
I would have to say either Little Red and the Little Red Poison Apple interaction or Underground Jagger. Little Red and Poison Apple was just super good against other necromancy lists where they wanted to like bring out a Lancelot and then get board control because it's just 0 mana and then it deals with an opposing Lancelot. And like I lost a lot of die rolls, but because of that combo, I was just able to completely bring back board control from the draw. And then like once I have board control as a necromancy deck, you just hammer it home until you win the game. And Underground Jagger was just like nobody ever expected it. Like if I ever set a card, people would play around Sign of the Future, and then like they would attack with a Lancelot, deal 700 to like a Rook Egg to get rid of my blocker, and then I would flip Underground Jagger, kill their Lancelot, and like have a 7/7 blocker to block their Cthulhu because they already pumped Lancelot. Like he just 1 for 0, 2 for 0, way too many times just because people weren't expecting it.
Yeah, that's solid. I think Underground Jagger is a cool card, and I think it's always been a card that's been good, but I'm glad that it got a moment to shine over the weekend for you because I think it's such a cool card, right? It's good, especially with Sign of the Future. Like you set an Underground Jagger, and they're just like you said, they just play around Sign of the Future. Which, I mean, like if you're playing against Alice's World, when they play around Sign of the Future, they actually just are using like Adam Brawley to eat their own creatures and stuff. Like they're kind of going all in on that strategy of not getting blown out by Sign of the Future. So
that is true.
I'm sure you got some advantage from people doing that.
I actually had in my top 8 match again against teammate Ryan Valentino. There was a really unfortunate moment in Game 3 with like everything on the line where he Pumpkin Witches and then he like attacks with Pumpkin Witch, Adam Brawley. And I'm at 700 life. And he's got 2 counters on Refrain, and I have a 1 set card, one chance standby, 1 stealth, whatever you want to call it. And all he has to do to win the game is bounce one of his Adam Brawleys, sacrifice the existing Adam Brawley and the Pumpkin Witch to play the Adam Brawley and attack again for lethal because it's 1,000 damage, completely wins the game. But if my set card is Underground Jagger, as soon as he goes to bounce Adam Brawley, then I just flip Underground Dragger, kill it, blow him out, and win the game.
Right.
And it was actually Sign of the Future. Like, my set card was Sign of the Future. I was dead to rights. I had accidentally, like, played 2 creatures, and I shouldn't have been in that game. But in top 8, you have access to each other's deck lists.
Yeah.
So he thinks about my deck list. He asks for Oracle text on Underground Dragger, then thinks about it. And he's like, man, if this is Underground Dragger, I lose the game. So he doesn't end up bouncing Adam Brawley, and he passes to turn. And I just had like double Thunder, double Cthulhu in hand, and I won that turn. It was heartbreaking for him, but definitely good for me.
Yeah, I think any kind of, I mean, there's situations I think you run into often, no matter what card game you play, where you're able to put your opponent in a position to where they're forced to play around a card, where it's like, if I don't play around it, I just get blown out and I lose. If I play around it, I might win. And sometimes, like, you don't want to. That's risky. That's a tough bluff to. I mean, you're top. You're trying to go to top 4. You know.
Yeah.
It's a tough decision to make, to just bounce it and hope. You know. So that's interesting. That's crazy that that's how it went down, and that's how you end up winning in Game 3, huh?
Yeah, it was pretty tense, and of course, like, time had just been called too. Like, it's about as tense as you could possibly make it, and he just accidentally made the wrong call. But yeah, that was kind of the reason I actually played the one sign in the main, because like, people are gonna be afraid of signs, but you know, most of the time for me, when I play 2 Underground Dragger, 1 sign, more often than not, it's gonna be Underground Dragger. And then once they see the Underground Dragger, they're gonna stop fearing sign, and then like sign gets more value inversely. So that was kind of the reason I played all 3 of or both of those.
And when they see both, they both kind of get more value.
Yeah, they're just like, man, what do I do now?
Yeah. And if there's two set standby as well, their head explodes.
Yeah.
So film. Let's talk a little bit about. There's a new set coming out.
Yeah.
When you're going into a situation where we're about to get all these new cards, where do you start as far as the deck building?
So for me, I was just kind of looking at the reflect of the set almost. I was like, all right, what card just doesn't make any sense with how it was assigned and is super broken? And for me, what immediately stood out was Gil Lapis. I think that card is head and shoulders better than any other card in the new set, and that's kind of where I started looking. I'm like, all right, how do I abuse this card so that it's basically just getting the most value as possible? And I think I haven't had too much time to like theory craft as much as I'd want to, because I was preparing for Richmond.
Yeah, you're too busy.
And then like I played in Richmond, and then I've only had a couple days really to mess around with the new set. But the counter spells in general look really good. The mana, like having the Moon Mana Dork, like makes ramp strategies really good, and that combined with the counter spells kind of makes control really good. And I think that helps Vlad more than it helps Gil Lapis, but Gil Lapis in general just kind of makes some other rulers unplayable.
Right.
Like, I think the red ruler, the new red ruler, the new blue ruler, they're not very good by themselves, and then the fact that like their Regalia gets shut down by Gil Lapis makes them weaker. The tree, in my opinion, is completely unplayable.
Hey.
Because if you play it against Gil Lapis, he just God arts your combo pieces out of your deck for you, and he's like, nice passive that I'm never gonna proc.
I'm very disappointed.
Yeah, Gil Lapis just eats those. And then against Kaguya, like Gil Lapis's free barrier of shadows on his ruler side just completely slows down Kaguya, and Kaguya does nothing to slow down Gil Lapis. So like the format, from what I see, is going to be just a bunch of Gil Lapis mirrors trying to like flip as soon as possible, or it's going to be Gil Lapis playing against Vlad, where Gil Lapis doesn't really get any ground against Vlad, and Gil Lapis's colors don't really let Gil Lapis play Tsukiyomi to deal with barrier of shadows, which I think Vlad could play. So that's kind of where I see the format going. But in terms of like brewing any lists, I haven't had enough time to think about it.
Well, I'm a huge fan of the tree.
Oh, it just gets blown out by Gil Lapis.
It's
absolutely
tree.
Insane.
Trees have deep roots.
Well, if the tree had a flip side, maybe we could talk. But
he doesn't need a flip side. It's
only half as good as a real ruler.
All right, well. We'll see. We'll see. You and I will be at an event, and you'll be sitting across from me, and I'll flip over a tree, and
we'll see.
You're gonna be stumped. Oh, that was good. That was so good.
All right, we went there.
Okay, I think I wasn't even trying to do that.
Oh, you did it.
No, it's part of my brilliance. Well, cool. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see the new set and kind of what comes out of your guys' team over there. It'll be cool, you know, to see you guys at events. What's the next one you guys plan on going to? Are you going to Pittsburgh?
We've got like one person going to Hawaii because he lives in California. We've got one person going to Montreal because he lives in like, what is that? Like Maine, with south of Maine but not Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, one of those.
Yeah, one of those little.
He lives in one of those, but for the most part, most of us are like New Jersey or Delaware based, and we're gonna collectively be going to Pittsburgh. It's looking like our next big event.
Well, awesome. Yeah, I won't be at Pittsburgh, but I'll be at Chicago. So if any of you guys, or not Chicago, it's in Illinois. So if any of you guys go over there, I'll see you there. I appreciate you hopping on the show. Yeah, man, I'm excited to see what you guys do. Thanks for hopping on.
Thank you very much, man. Take it easy.
All right, take care.